Home Secretary Priti Patel has told MPs that the government remains committed to sending asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda.
It comes after an intervention from the European Court of Human Rights, which led to the first flight being cancelled minutes before takeoff this week.
The Rwanda asylum plan, which was announced in April, intends to take some asylum seekers who arrive in the UK on a one-way ticket to Rwanda to claim asylum there instead.
To discuss the story further, we're delighted to be joined by the Bishop of Buckingham, the Right Reverend Dr. Alan Wilson. So, Bishop, you were one of all of the bishops who wrote a letter to the Times saying this was shameful. Why did you write that letter?
Because we believe it's shameful. It's shameful in all sorts of ways. It's morally shameful. It's legally shameful. It's probably a waste of time and highly ineffective, and it's incredibly expensive. But it's the moral and legal problem, really, that I think was the biggest motivation for the letter that went in.
Well, you say there's a legal problem. Obviously, every court in the UK, up to and including the Supreme Court, actually said that it was legal and that the flight could take off. So do you know more about the legalities than the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom?
Yeah, the basis legally in UK law is Somerset's case of 1772, where the Lord Chief Justice laid down, this is Lord Mansfield, that every human being in Britain is in a free country, and when the slave's foot touched British soil, he was entitled to due process. That's not the Europeans, it's nothing like that. 1772, it's one of the cornerstones of the fabulous freedoms that we have in Britain.
Well, you obviously don't agree with the Supreme Court, but I wondered what your problem was with France, because these people are not fleeing persecution in a far-flung place. These people are fleeing France. So why, if these people are genuine refugees, what's the problem with these people claiming for asylum and refuge in France?
Well, the biggest group of people crossing the Channel right now are from Afghanistan, and they're very often people who put their lives on the line for Britain during our campaign to help support our service personnel in Afghanistan. They speak English. They fondly imagined that Britain would be interested in helping them when their own repressive regime came after them to kill them. And it's not to do. They don't speak French. They didn't put their lives on the line for the French government. It was the British government, the British Armed Services. And I think we deserve proper humanitarian treatment for them. And as I say, as a cornerstone of British law, they deserve due process. That's what we do. It's part of our British freedom. And it's been so for 250 years. And it's really important to respect that. It's one of the things that makes Britain such a great place to be, that we have these freedoms underscored not by the tabloid press, anything like that, underscored by hundreds of years of tradition that secure our freedom, and the freedom of anybody to be considered as a full human being and given the benefit of due process on our soil is absolutely fundamental to our laws.
And so what's the Church of England's solution to illegal immigration coming into the country? Do you take the view that anybody who wants to come here should be able to come here? Do you think that every refugee around the world should be able to pitch their tent in the UK if they want to? Do you think there should be no restrictions at all on who comes into the UK?
No, I don't think any of those things. They're ludicrous, ludicrous ideas, and I don't have any ludicrous. You need safe and secure and properly administered ways into this country, which are subject to all the proper moral and legal and ethical boundaries that are part of the wonderful tradition of Britain. My mother came to this country as a refugee from Hitler because it was different, because this country was a fabulous place to be, because it had the rule of law and because it was a free country in a way that her own country wasn't. And we need to maintain that tradition. It's a very proud part of being British.
Now, I can see, what you're saying and how we've always been a fair country, and we're still taking in tens of thousands of refugees and immigrants who are going via illegal passage. But I'm wondering what the church could do. You're obviously very vocal. You're wanting to support these people. So I was looking online about how much land the church owns, which is thousands upon thousands of pounds, thousands of acres, how much money the church has. And I wondered, what are you doing as a group, rather than just opposing what the voting public have said, opposing what the democratically elected government have said? What's the church going to do to put its hand in its pocket and use its land to support these refugees, if you feel so strongly about it?
Many church projects do, in fact, support refugees, and I'm welcoming 4 refugees from Ukraine into my home next Tuesday.
Okay, so that's...
And all over the country, there are people at Lambeth Palace. Exactly what you suggest should be happening is exactly what is happening.
So that's 4 refugees, and we've got, obviously, lots of families and friends doing the same thing.
There are all sorts of...
We get that.
If you go to any refugee charity, you will find that Christians, not just Anglican Christians, are absolutely in the front row of decent humanitarian provision when people arrive in this country, along with other people of all faiths and none. But no, the churches are absolutely, and if you go to Dover, you will find exactly that. It is the churches and the Christian communities, not just Anglican, but are absolutely in the front row of a proper British humanitarian response to this problem.
And I fully appreciate that, but I was looking at, you're seeing, congregations falling, a decline of 15% since 1998. So I was looking at how does the church sort of become more active? And I'm looking at now, the church owns 120,000 acres of rural land alone. It's got money in endowments of over £8 billion. So I'm just saying, what are you going to do on your land, not for in your home, but what could the church do to be as active as it is writing letters to the Times and opposing the government and the public opinion?
Oh, it is very active. I mean, one of the most interesting projects I saw a couple of years ago was about the regeneration of a Gloucestershire village through the fact the church owned land there and could bring together community groups to help ease the housing problem that people have over social housing in rural Gloucestershire. There are projects all over the country that the church is involved in, which are consistent with our general purposes. And that is, the ethical use of land, the use of creative projects, all of that does go on in all sorts of different ways in communities all over England.
What would you say to our viewers, many of which might be watching the TV at the moment and say, here we go, here's a out-of-touch, privileged, privately educated, Oxbridge-educated person, completely, remotely out of touch with what working-class communities think. What would you say to those people?
Well, we are all entitled in this country to have a view. Part of being British, we don't live in a place where you have a sort of lynch mob if you're the wrong sort of person. But actually, if I may say so, one aspect of my life in the church over many years is that you get to see all sorts of people. When I worked, for example, in a prison, I worked with lots of people who weren't privileged, Oxbridge-educated, private schoolboys or anything like that. We have all sorts of community links with all kinds of different people. And that's really a very important part of ministry in the church. We cover the whole country. Very often, the vicar is the only person from a sort of profession like that who is living in some inner city areas. All the others live outside and commute in. Because of the parish system, we have all kinds of relationships and communities that we build up all over Britain. And that doesn't make for a very narrow outlook. Obviously, you meet all sorts of people in all sorts of ways and take them immensely seriously. I mean, the 4 young men I was with the other day in a high-security prison getting confirmed, they're not Oxbridge-educated at all. They have an extraordinary story of renewal and lives being turned round, and the church is right at the middle of that, of course. And they are equal with me or anybody else within the church because it's a place of equality, of security and of truth. So we don't do this kind of sneering at people because they're people we don't like. That's just babyish.
Dr. Alan Wilson, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning and putting your point across. Thank you very much indeed.
They always said that the Church of England... They always said the Church of England was the Conservative Party at prayer. I sometimes think it's become the Labour Party leading the prayers. Whether it's the Conservative Party still at prayer, I don't know. But we'd love to hear people's views about that. Coming up after